Hey, Flickin' Fanatics, this is Pastor Dad Fox here for Willow, episode 7 review recap. We made it to the penultimate episode and finally here to see all the amazing things that this episode series has brought together. And I'll be honest, this episode created some thoughts. All right, we'll talk to you in just a second. All right. So as we jumped in, episode 7 of Willow is titled Beyond the Shattered Sea. It's kind of been this build up to the more immemorial city so that we can finally get get to the point of rescuing Eric, kind of back the crone, doing all this stuff. And usually the penultimate episode, the second to last, kind of has take some large steps so that in episode 8, the finale, you see some good recap. And this did some of that, but then also did other things too. It was actually a decent episode. I'll say that. I enjoyed it. But we launch off with, or I guess let's recap where we left off. We left off with Laura trying to rescue Kit, who fell through the water into this. Basically, the worm is the magic that lives inside the world. We found that out during this episode. That's kind of what the worm is. Waiting to be awakened. And so this liquid, as we saw Eric drinking at the end of the last episode, that orange stuff is basically the magic, and then that's what Kit fell down into. And so we begin this episode with the interaction between Eric, they're in the immemorial city, Eric, and the new person, Lily, the stranger, at the end of last episode. And I'll be honest, this interaction at the beginning was one of the most cringy parts of probably the entire series. It was a little uncomfortable. The dialogue between them was really awkward and forced. It didn't come off really smooth. And that, okay. I mean, that part of, not everything's going to be perfect, but it was marginal. And with that, we kind of have this back and forth banter of, Eric doing what Eric does of trying to basically romance, or not necessarily romance. She's assuming he's attempting to do that. And really it kind of creates this weird tension where she's kind of angry at him for being who he is. Of course, he then, is trying to elaborate on the fact that he's a prince. And she thinks he's trying to come on to her. He's actually just trying to say no, that he thinks that's why he was picked up and put in this position. But at least we know he's not alone in that space. And then as we cut from there, or he's looking into the water, the water reappears, or he goes, as he's looking into the water and drinking it, he sees that Kit is in the water. And so he dives in to try and rescue her. And we see that Kit can see him, he can see her, and they're trying to reach for each other. But at the same time, then it comes back and Laura is actually rescuing her out of the kind of sheet of ice that they had fallen through, that crust that had come over the worm, or that magic liquid. And then she rescues Kit, yanks her up out of there. Awesome. Perfect. Okay. She's been saved. And then the whole group exits. They flee, and now we're on to the next part. It kind of has this little fast forward where now we're at the edge of the Shattered Sea. But they escaped from the skeleton. They escaped from the underground, which the fact that the skeleton weren't able to pursue them anymore, kind of like that they were just dropped off, which, okay. But when we have Borman with the Cuirass trying to figure out what to do and whether or not he is worthy, he's nervous, almost afraid to put the key into the cuirass because he doesn't want to be let down by finding out that he's not worthy of it. And so he's waiting for this perfect pivotal moment so that he can put the cuirass in and hopefully reveal himself. But he has this mindset that it's got to be perfect timing. It has to be a heroic moment. But he's still wearing the cuirass. He has it. They have the equipment. He has the Lux Arcana that unlocks it. Sweet. And then as they get to the shores of the Shattered Sea, they run into this little tiny hut and the cabin with this old gentleman named Zeb. They kind of find out that he's from Kashmir. A little bit of backstory on him. Makes them some just delicious looking worm soup. Not WYRM like the worm, that magic stuff, but the worms as WORM, gross. And I guess it creates a meal and they're good to go with that. But we find out that Zeb has been on so many adventures, you can't actually remember what he's been doing or how long he's been on the Shattered Sea. He was a paladin, and he went on many quests to rescue the princess from the Immemorial City. And he basically has lost his mind in a lot of this. The funny thing is then, okay, is the princess he was going to rescue, was that the princess at the that's in the Immemorial City with Eric at the time? We don't know. And then but he's essentially lost track of time. His mind is addled. He doesn't really remember anything. He's been there for so long, because also as you're in the Shattered Sea, it's incredibly hard to know your direction, know where you're going and what's happening. Again, Graydon shows himself to be incredibly, incredibly valuable. And prediction from early in the episode, where I said that I'm pretty confident that he was, or not in the episode, but in the series, that I was confident that he was actually a wizard or a sorcerer, seems to be coming to fruition. And he has kind of a sixth sense. He can recognize and pick up on things. He also recognizes the animal that's living in the ground, and that's actually tied to the sleigh that they can flee with, almost like a horse-drawn carriage, but it's with a giant snake-like creature that lives underneath the sea. I enjoyed thank you, Sean. I enjoyed the episode as well. It was not the best episode. I'm still going to lean on the best episode being either 4 or 6. But this episode did some things really well. But Graydon is also the one who recognized that there's one of the Crone's weapons, the Dag and the Doom, were in the hut. When they wake up the next morning, they're trying to figure out whether they're ready to leave. Boom. The villains, or the bad guys, the cronies of the Crone, show up and start the chase. And so they flee, and they're taken off on this sandworm that kind of crawls underneath the surface of the sea, and they're fleeing. And we see a pretty awesome battle here, and this is the moment where Borman, I believe this is the part where he finally puts on the cuirass, or maybe it's later in the episode. I can't remember. I'll get to it in my notes. But they're fleeing. They're getting away. Borman is battling against Doom, and Dag is kind of flying around after them. And in this awesome moment, we see, it's a Mudmander. Sorry, like a salamander, Mudmander is the creature. The Graydon actually uses his flute as a wand and projects music, and so his wand, essentially his flute, becomes the conduit for his power, which is awesome, because then we see Willow actually engage with him on that. So they're able to dispose of the bad guys and get away, but they end up on a little like deserted island in the middle of the Shattered Sea, trying to figure out, what are we doing? Kit begins to spar with Jade, but tells her not to hold back so they can learn. We see Willow working on trading with Alora. And Alora is battling this internal struggle of, does she believe in herself that she has the abilities that she is who she's supposed to be? Kit trying to live up to the fact that she wants to be a warrior, but the person who was training her was always holding back and never really pushed her. And so they have this good battle sequence. And we also see a progression of their relationship as their fight builds to a culmination of them finally kissing again. And then, but we also see where Willow is training Alora and trying to press her to use all of her emotions, and she's denying part of it, and she's not really able to harness her power because she's not utilizing it. And that is then countered with also Willow talks with Graydon. Then we have Graydon and Alora both practicing magic together and working on defense. And Graydon is much more intuitive and goes with his feeling much more astutely, whereas Alora is kind of tied up in her own head. But when Willow finally gets her to release everything, she puts it all out there and slams Willow pretty impressively and knocks him to the ground by releasing a massive amount of her power. And so there's this beautiful part of the her trying to realize her total abilities. But we also see in this whole montage sequence that the crone is actively working to deceive each one of them independently and draw them apart. She's trying to separate the group, weaken them so they don't have the strength of the entire. Matter of fact, she uses Mims as a lure against Willow. He's trying to reach out, and she uses him to basically say that he's failed. That he abandoned Mims, his daughter, and that he's never there. And so she's playing on the vulnerability and weakness of each one of them independently. And we also have a flash, one powerful thing. It's a narcotic spell that she learned in Nockmar, which hints to the fact that she's been picking up things from other places, the books she's been reading, things she's been learning. The crone is also, we find out, speaking to Alora. But we flash back to Eric and Lily in the Immemorial City, where basically she comes onto him, kisses him, but he confesses his love for Alora, or Dove. He still doesn't know she's Alora Dannon. And they get kind of this awkward moment where he tries to flee, comes back. The water was dried up earlier in the episode. And we'll come back to Eric and Lily, but they have this awkward tension of her trying to come onto him trying to stay true to Alora, but there's this underlying tension that you feel like she's deceiving. She's constantly manipulating the system. And that seems to be true as she's trying to coerce him into giving in the power to her, almost as though she is the crone, which we'll keep building towards. So again, Willow has his vision. They start to have conversations about how long they've been there, where to go, what's going on. They've been weeks or days or months. Nobody knows how long they've been trapped on the Shattered Sea. And this is where Alora starts to see where they're trying to pull everyone apart. We have this conversation with Kit and Alora about Mad Mardigan, and that Mad Mardigan loved Kit, and he was only doing what he thought was best to protect Alora because he wanted to care for his own family and protect Kit. And then Kit confesses that she's jealous of Alora's life and relationships with people. And it's funny, Kit never wanted to be a princess, but Alora wanted to be somebody. And now that they're both in those positions, they're realizing that They're kind of just the opposite sides of the same coin. Borman attempts to use the Lux Arcana, but nothing's happening, and finds out that it doesn't activate the cuirass, which causes him to doubt whether or not he's worthy, and he's afraid that he's a nobody. This is where the crone is just messing with every one of them, trying to deceive them. And Will is has another vision of Mims, seeing her skeletal as she tells him, I was talking about this earlier. She actually tells him in this vision about Silas, who died earlier, that he came home. And he's like, that's impossible. He died. And she's like, well, he came back home not knowing he was deceased, and it was a trick. Or that's how Willow recognized it was a trick, was when she said that he came home, and he's like, no, he already died. And that's where he starts to recognize that it's the crone. But then everyone comes forward, and earlier in the episode, Graydon was talking with the Mudmander, who he named Kenneth, and telling him that he was lonely, that he couldn't go forward. And so he lets them free. Now we have all the people upset because they're trapped in the Shattered Sea. And Graydon set loose their mode of transport. So now they're left afoot. But Alora recognizes there's not far to go. And this whole thing is them trying to be, as it culminates and builds towards the end, is the crone is, as they get closer and closer to the end, the crone is trying to deceive them and separate them apart and make them not believe, because the immemorial city is at the end. But as they get there, Alora also states that she knows that in Willow's vision, that for this to end, she ends up dead in the immemorial city with the broken wand. And that's why Willow didn't want to really train her early on, because he was trying to protect her. Or that's why he did want to train her, is to prepare her and equip her for this. But that's also why Saoirse wanted her hidden and her powers masked, so that they wouldn't find this out. But we find out that Alora knew, and Willow's like, how did you know about his vision? And he said that the crone has been, or she said the crone has been telling her. So we see this up and down all over the place. Again, the soundtrack for this episode, outstanding. I've been saying that about every episode. They intermix pop songs and the music is always really well placed and really well timed and builds on the emotion. But in this kind of moment at the end where they're standing on this waterfall, they get to the edge of the immemorial, or of the Shattered Sea, and it's just a cliff. That's what some of the things were. But it takes takes the leap of faith, kind of like in Indiana Jones. You got to step off. Not that there's going to be a bridge there, but you got to be willing to make the leap of faith. And Alora is doubting herself whether she's capable. Kit is struggling because she's jealous of Alora. But then Kit basically tells Alora, I don't believe in almost anything, except for I do have faith and I do believe in you that you can do this. So the two of them hug because they realize they have to do this together. And so instead of holding hands and going off the cliff like Thelma and Louise, there's a throwback reference for you. Kit and Alora hug it out and jump off together, get separated in the air, but eventually they hit the water at the bottom, and it's a pool. And they come up out of the water, and they are where the immemorial city is. And they start the long, long, long walk in, and they end up at the very end getting to this center spot, the same little well of water right inside the main door, where we know that Lily took Eric. I have a feeling that maybe the other guys, after they jumped, eventually will jump, and they'll surprise in the next episode, coming up behind them as to help rescue or to play a pivotal role. But at the very end, the teaser is Eric comes out. New haircut, new suit, new sword, everything, looking rather dapper. And we have Alora coming, who is in love with Eric. We have Kit, who is trying to rescue her brother and find her father. And Eric, who has given himself over to the crone. Just that all lays the foundation for where episode 8 will go. We've got one episode left in this series. It's 8 episodes. There is rumor that they have left at the end. They've left it open for a possible another season, but that means they still have to wrap this season up well. One of the things I read said one of the most terrifying things to happen to a character in a show is the dreaded hair change, and Eric got the terrifying haircut. It's drastically different from his look early in the series, but we finally have this face-off. Alora, Kit, the crone is there, we know that, or Lily, whatever she is, and Kit is with Alora, but we also know there's 2 sorcerers still in the background, a great warrior with Borman, and Jade, who is another great warrior. I have a feeling, my predictions for episode 8 is that either Borman will be proved to be worthy, or Kit will take the cuirass and she'll be the worthy one to help defend. Or not Kit, Jade. Jade will be the one to wear it and prove herself worthy. And that Willow has better magic. He always talks about how he got lucky and he's not a very powerful wizard, but he actually does a pretty awesome job in his training of Alora and of Graydon. And I think Graydon's character is one that's had one of the best arcs. And I was a little disappointed in this episode because it kind of left him hanging a little bit. There were moments they could have really built with Graydon, and they kind of left him hanging. And in the same way, some of the dialogue of the episodes so far, this episode had some of the it had that dialogue of that you see in shows that real humans don't ever talk like that, which was one of those things that's just like, okay. And then it built up to moments that didn't really pay off. The moment didn't hit just right. Overall, still really enjoyed the episode. There were just some things in it that as they were building, I was hoping they would have continued the momentum they had in 4. 5 was a filler episode, and that's okay. But then 6 hit really hard again, was really good. And I was hoping that it'd be more on that trend and not this dip off. And the dip here, it almost felt like just like episode 5 and episode 3 were their bridges. Episode 4, episode 6, and I'm hoping episode 8 will be fantastic. But that's kind of the use an episode to do character development, plot hole filling. There's a little bit of action, but then it's all really a setup for this big showdown in the next one. And I think that's been one of the things that's kind of not necessarily hurt this series, but it could have built better, if that makes any sense. You guys let me know what you think. But I'm excited. I would give this episode, of all of them, I would put this one probably, of the 7 episodes we've had, I'd put this as the 4th best. Episode 4 being my favorite, episode 6 being number 2, episode 5 being number 3. This is number 4. And it kind of just falls behind it's still better or on par with 1 and 2. But 4, 5, and 6, that second act of this series was just so well done that it really laid a proper foundation for the show to finish on a high note, really high note. And this episode kind of squandered a little bit of that, but I'm hopeful that that the work they did here, that we'll appreciate it better after seeing episode 8. Sometimes that happens. You are left kind of going, well, all right, that didn't really do much for me, and it was a little weird. And then by the time you hit the finale, you're like, now that episode is way, way, way better. And so I'm hopeful that's what'll happen. Episode 8 comes out Wednesday. We'll be on here Thursday evening at 9 p.m. to do a season or an episode 8 recap, as well as a full series review that evening. We would love for you guys to join us. Click like, subscribe for more content, and we would love to hear you guys' feedback. Let us know what you guys thought of the episode, and tell us your thoughts. All right. See you guys on Thursday evening for the finale.